Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Malaysia has already lost our last Sumatran rhino in 2019, and now we may be watching another gentle, ancient species fade quietly into extinction, the Malayan Tapir. Now, more than 100 have been killed by vehicles since 2020, and they're often at night and on roads that cut through what's left of their forest habitat. Now, is there still hope that we can save the Malayan Tapir? And what must be done before that window closes? Joining me now on the show is IS Shanmugaraj Subramaniam, who is the Executive Director of the Malaysian Nature Society. Shan, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. This is a distressing statistic to learn that over 100 Malayan tapirs have been killed on roads in the last 4 years. Can you maybe begin our conversation by explaining why does this keep happening? Why do these slow, gentle animals end up on roads, and why can't we stop them from getting killed in road traffic collisions?
Yeah, as we know, our forests, is really shrinking, to say, and tapir they move around. They cross in areas which are open areas, especially grassland and all. And most of the time when tapir comes, across with a vehicle, they just stay put. They don't run. Yeah, and in the wild as well, when they see something bigger than them and all, they just stay put, and then they just don't move, and then slowly they will move. It's a very slow moving animal in the forest, and tapir likes to feed on plants, so they go to forest edge, and they go to areas where there is openings in forest gaps and all, and so they got more than, not mistaken, 217 species of vegetation or that they eat. So they cannot climb trees. So they like to eat young shoots and young, leaves and all. And so that's why they come to the forest edge.
Right.
So closer to, yeah. So,
Shan, can I just ask you about these? So our roads that cut through forested areas, has there been consideration about the migration, the way animals move? Have we thought about wildlife crossings? Has that been built into the design of our roads?
We have wildlife crossing in few areas in the country, but is it enough? That one we do not know. And as well as animals, they when you build this type of crossing, yeah, maybe one time they will use, but not regularly. Okay. And if their area has been disturbed, for sure they will go to the nearest place, roaming areas where they move in. There is disturbance in these areas, they will move, and they will cross over roads and maybe plantations and maybe housing areas. And most of the time our roads are really crossing over huge landscapes, forest landscapes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beyond roadkill, what do you think are some of the main threats that's really driving the Malayan tapir towards extinction? How concerned are you? What indicators are you watching?
Is the shrink of forest areas, huge forest areas. There's a lot of areas being open for everybody knows there's state revenue related to logging and all. So so when there is opening of, or there is disturbance in the forest, and this tapir starts to move around, and they are not a very aggressive animal, so they are very shy. So sometimes if there is a lot of disturbance and all, they will just go away from that landscape. And also food source. And if there's lacking of food source as well, they'll still move. And if you see where in the ecosystem, trees grows, vegetation grows certain high level, and if you don't have elephants and around to break the open the vegetation, so that the more smaller creatures can feed along where the elephant moving down areas. So that's why we find across tapir starts to come out to housing areas and this type of field areas.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So you said that they're shy, they're not aggressive, they're rarely seen, they're slow moving, they're gentle creatures. They're not as I would say, if I may say, they're not as iconic as the Malayan tiger or the elephant. Can I ask you why we should save the tapir? What do we lose both ecologically and morally if we let this species vanish?
Is it the Malayan tapir, the black and white, you find only in this region? Yeah, even though there is the other species, but the black and white species you find more in Peninsular Malaysia. I think goes right up a bit to Thailand, and Vietnam a bit, but then it's more towards in this peninsula. That's why they call the Malayan tapir, Mm-hmm. So, and when this species, it's also related to the if not mistaken, it was the horse family, Oh. Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
and it's a very unique, it's a very unique species, and we have lost the rhino. Mm-hmm. And to say, like example, we have certain states, they are losing their wildlife as well. In Selangor, the biggest animal that they come across is only tapir. Okay, we don't find elephant, we don't find the seladang, or even tiger in Selangor. We only have tapir now. And so other states also the same thing. Slowly, when we have the disturbance of this habitat, and this is where we lose this species. And when we lose this species, there will be changes on the ecosystem as well.
Right. So what policy shifts have you seen to address this? This isn't something that's happened overnight. We've seen a decline in the Malayan tapir population for several years now. Even the minister raised the worrying statistics I mentioned at the beginning of the show about tapirs being killed by road accidents. What policy shifts have you seen, Shan, that show that the state, both federal and state level, is serious about addressing the population decline?
Yeah, like Selangor now, they know that tapir is a very icon species, and it becomes the state species, as tapir. Mm-hmm. So for Selangor, use tapir as their state animal, and as well as the federal government, as together with Wildlife Department, they are looking at, we have the Tapir Rehabilitation Center in Sungai Dusun, and as well as the coming one that will be in Negeri Sembilan, somewhere near Kinabalu National Park, Kinabalu Forest Reserve, somewhere around there in Negeri Sembilan. So, and they are looking at rehabilitation center. But the other aspect is the habitat itself, preserving the habitat. This is where the federal government is very strongly looking at more landscape to be protect. That is what we are looking at. We have the Royal Belum, we have the Endar Rompi National Park, and we have the Taman Negara. So, but other places like the peat swamp, we have to have these huge landscapes for this wildlife.
Right. So, what would you say would be the most urgent intervention right now? I mean, if we had to act as quickly as possible to protect the Malayan tapir from going extinct, what would you like to see? If you could push through one urgent intervention, what would it be?
You see, we have the Forest Reserve Act, but we also have the Wildlife Act. Not all forest reserve is Wildlife Act.
Oh.
Yes. So like example, Taman Negara, yes, we have Taman Negara, we have double, we have forest. The whole area is a permanent forest reserve, and also is under the Wildlife Protection Act. So why not, when we have the Wildlife Protection Act, which governance by the federal government? So if we can have most of our important landscapes to be protected under the Wildlife Act, which there is another, that means you have double law in it.
Yeah.
So either you protect the trees and the whole ecosystem, but we also need to protect the wildlife. So
Yes.
these we already have the law, we already have everything. It's just need to place it only. The state government need to work with the federal government to. It's a very straightforward thing. If the state government says yes, I protect this area together, we have the forest reserve, we protect with the Wildlife Act, immediately it's like a double protection in this landscape.
So you're saying it's actually quite low hanging fruit. It can be done. What's stopping it from happening?
Land. When it comes to land, is state matter. So if we have this double protection, then anything they have to get both parties to agree for opening land space. Like now, states can open their land if they just have their own discussion in the state level, and they can just open the land for any development. But if you have this double protection, you start to protect. Yeah.
Right. Shan, I have to ask you. So you said that Selangor has made the tapir its state icon, its state animal icon, its state mascot, right? Has that gone beyond just the cosmetic, beyond just the superficial? Are they acting on really protecting what they've made as their state animal icon?
Yes, they are looking at the species. They are trying to protect more landscape of wildlife landscape, because they know that they need to have huge areas for protection. So the state is looking at it, but how serious are they? That is another thing that we have to look at.
Okay, well, hopefully it's not too late before we lose this wonderful species. Shan, thank you so much for joining me on the show and shedding some light on this really urgent and important matter. I appreciate your time. Thank you. That was Shanmugaraj Subramaniam from MNS there. And that wraps up this segment of Consider This. We'll be back with more on the topic of saving the Malayan tapir in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. We're discussing the decline of the population of the Malayan tapir, which is already currently listed as endangered. This comes as the Natural Resources and Environment and Sustainability Minister, Nik Ahmad, he revealed that 112 Malayan tapirs have been killed by road traffic in the past 4 years. This is a disturbing statistic, and joining us now to discuss how we can save the Malayan tapir is Dr. Evelyn Lim Ailin, who is a senior lecturer at UPM's Faculty of Forestry and Environment. She's also a research associate at its Institute for Social Science Studies. Dr. Evelyn, thank you for joining me on the show. From your perspective, having studied these wonderful creatures for many years, how alarmed are you? How alarmed should we be about the decline in the Malayan tapir population? Are we watching slow extinction in real time?
Okay, thank you, Melisa. Now, when we talk about the Malayan tapir, the main primary cause is actually the loss of habitat and the creation of forest fragmentation. These two has actually exposed the Malayan tapir population to secondary threats. And there has been an increasing trend of displaced Malayan tapir from their habitat, exposing them to human-tapir conflict situations and becoming victim to roadkills. And what is of real concern to us is actually the incidences of roadkills. Why roadkills versus human-tapir conflicts is because we know tapirs, they are actually very shy, so there hasn't been any record of human or tapir death because of human-tapir conflict, when they are roaming in settlements or plantations, or even in kebun areas, But what we are of concern is actually the roadkill statistics. Now, between 2020 and 2024 alone, there are between 23 to 25 individuals that have become victims of roadkill annually. So that is an alarming rate. And we know that these are because of the construction of roads and highways that cuts through the habitat of the Malayan tapir, and these have contributed to increasing roadkill incidences. And among the highways which have high frequency roadkills are especially the East Coast, highways connecting Pekan, Kuantan, in Pahang, and Kuala Terengganu. These are generally in the LTT too.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So all road users who frequently use those roads to be extra careful when driving, to look out for these creatures. Can I just ask you, Dr. Evelyn, just very quickly, talk to me about how important they are ecologically. I understand the tapir is, it's not a charismatic predator. It's not a majestic, animal. Well, it is to me, but for most people, it's overshadowed by other more majestic fauna. Ecologically, though, how important are they?
Now, Malayan tapir are very important seed dispersers. They are herbivores. Unlike some common misconception that they actually feed on insects, just like the anteaters or pangolins, they are actually not of the same order. They are actually from the odd-toed ungulates, or we call them Perissodactyla. Generally, they are herbivores. So their favorite foods are actually, leaves, fruits, and they are quite generalist in terms of what they consume. So because of that, they are actually very important seed disperser, and they are also very important in terms of regeneration of our forests.
Right, okay. You mentioned a little earlier that forest fragmentation is a considerable threat to the Malayan tapir. Talk to me a little bit about how that impacts the genetic diversity of tapir populations, why it's important for us to acknowledge what happens when their habitat is fragmented.
Okay, forest fragmentation actually results in the division of a large patch of forest. And when that happens, the population of the Malayan tapir, or wildlife in general, is also divided and separated from each other. So this separation into smaller units make them very vulnerable to scholastic variables, let's say in terms of the varietiness or diversity of genetic, especially the good genetics for reproduction. They may face lack of mates. Inbreeding may even occur and reduce the strength in terms of their genetic quality. Dispersal issues may be of concern, and also more susceptible to diseases. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if I understand correctly, Malaysia has a Malayan Tapir Conservation Action Plan. So we're aware that this is a real concern that we may be losing our Malayan Tapir to extinction. How effective do you think this action plan has been so far?
The Malayan Tapir Action Plan, or MATCAP in short, is a 10-year period, beginning from 2021 to 2030. But because of COVID, actually, there was a delay in the implementation. But we have actually identified or prioritized 16 outcomes and also 49 activities. And these are actually ongoing, activities which have actually been done even before the MedCap plan was on. What is important is this, this actually provides us a guidance of where, the conservation strategy and initiatives of the Malayan Tapir should go to, in the next 10 years. Because as a whole, there are so many wildlife that we need to look into. So, and various wildlife would have different needs and issues to handle. So for the Malayan Tapir, what we have actually focused is that we want to focus on, roadkill issues, which is actually a main threat to the Malayan Tapir in this sense. In terms of habitat management, it is very similar with other wildlife, and it is an integration with other policies and plans. We also see the importance of a research component in this MedCap plan, because we would like to have scientific data which helps us to make sound judgment and decision making. And we also have SIPA initiatives. But what I think it is, what we really need to push through the agenda here is to push through the initiative of SIPA activities to increase knowledge, because there is a lack of knowledge and misconception on the Malayan Tapir. There is a lack of concern of the Malayan Tapir. I've been asking students and also public, what do you think about the Malayan Tapir? I don't feel anything, I don't even feel like loving it. Generally it's because they do not know what is tapir, and they do not even know that we have tapir. So the roles and the functions, why do we have it? In fact, this tapir, Malayan tapir, it's endemic to Southeast Asian region. We have 4 species in the world. 3 other species are in Central America and Southern America, and this is the largest species of all the 4. The only one with black and white coloration. So, in the among the community, research community of tapirs, they are actually very intrigued by the Malayan tapir because of unique features. So I think this intrigueness we must actually spread among Malaysians, so that they actually, appreciate the presence of the Malayan tapir through the ecological functions that it actually provides. And that is critical.
Definitely a need to increase, awareness campaign, increase knowledge and love for this, for the Malayan tapir, named after our country. Can I get you to elaborate, Dr. Evelyn, when you talked about, providing real protection for the Malayan tapir? How would you go about addressing the roadkill issues, as you listed earlier? And also when you talked about research, needing a research component, what is it that we still don't yet know or don't understand about the tapir? What areas require more research for us to save the tapir?
In terms of research, research of the Malayan tapir have been very active in the early 2000s, right, to maybe about 2010. And then it sort of like slowed down, and towards the end, towards 2020, there was a need for us to understand, to get more updated data. So these are actually important data, like, where is the distribution, what is the existing population, because we are actually just doing estimations at the moment based on the different wildlife surveys, public complaints, observations. So, having a full data on where are these wildlife would really help us, in determining the strategy and how do we conserve it. And what is also of concern to us is those outside of protected areas, because in protected areas the wildlife species is actually protected, but more of these are actually coming out because of habitat degradation, fragmentation. Therefore, there is a need for us to know where are these locations of areas where the Malayan tapir goes, so that we can also do consolidated activities to regenerate back the forest, or activities with the community.
Okay, so to know where to target and to help, where help is needed the most. Are you optimistic that we can still save the Malayan tapir? Is there still hope?
Well, it is estimated currently in 2020 there are 700 to 800 Malayan tapirs. With this number, I am optimistic that we can sustain it. But you know, we have to work very hard, yeah, to ensure that our initiatives are well coordinated, well integrated, and the human dimension should also be looked into. Because when we talk about conservation, we always talk about conservation of wildlife. We forget that conservation is also about the people, because it is the people, yeah, who are facing these issues, and they are the one reacting and developing these conservation strategies. So that is a component which I think we should also balance up with the technical science that provides the hard data that is needed for the scientific part of decision making.
Dr. Evelyn, thank you so much for joining me on the show today and for sharing your insights and also for your work in helping save the Malayan tapir. That wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching and good night.